This is the exciting world of drag boat racing. These incredible 400-pound lightweight boats are pushed along the liquid quarter mile by 2,000 horsepower engines at better than 220 miles an hour. But they are volatile. They can burst into flames without warning, spewing oil onto the driver. Control is critical, as the smallest error will send these unstable boats into any number of wild flips, rolls, and crashes. Make no mistake about it, water can be as hard as concrete when you hit it at great speed. Injuries in this sport are commonplace, and until recently, fatalities occurred with alarming frequency. Thanks to a canopy, the driver of this boat swam away without injury. Monster tanks are becoming more and more popular. This one's called the Beast. It's a Chevrolet truck mounted on a vintage military tank. And when you drive this baby, you can make tracks anywhere. This modern monster tank is faster, sleeker, and more flexible. It's controlled by 2 steering bars and can turn on a dime and smash cars with brute force. With their massive weight and twin engines, these monsters can survive anything. This is Taurus, weighing in at around 10,000 pounds. These trucks were originally built as novelties for recreational purposes, but nowadays they're in hot competition with each other to see who is king of the hill. This is Bigfoot. He's the current king of the hill. This is Awesome Kong, and he is awesome. And who'd ever believe these monsters can actually float on water? But it's true. Due to the size of their tires, they skim along the water like giant pontoons. And the more tires they have, the better they float, as shown by this huge 8-wheeler. However, they have to be careful when they enter the water, approaching it straight on. If they go in at an angle, it creates problems. And they soon find out that not all monster trucks can float.
I got it.
Talk about power and strength. Here, 2 monster trucks engage in a tug-of-war. The loser? Well, it's the car in the middle.
Of strength, car pull apart right there.
Is this an optical illusion? Are those tires really that big? You bet they are. Those are 11-foot Tundra tires, used in some of the most brutal terrain in the world. Here, they turn slowly through a shallow mud pit. And as you can see, this truck powers through with ease. But that's not always the case with mud pits. Here, the going gets tough for these mud racers as they attempt to cannonball down a 4-foot deep mud pit. It's even tough on the spectators. The object of mud racing is simple. Get through the mud pit the quickest. And with these big engine mud slammers, you never know what's going to happen. These folks have had enough. They're going to look for cleaner, drier seats. Meanwhile, back in the mud pit, another competitor gives it a try. But he's all over the place. The crowd, well, they just love it. But then they don't have to clean up the mud. Here's the master mudder. He thinks he's got the competition beat because he's using tractor tires. Wrong. The monster trucks remain the favorites of the fans. Here is some incredible side-by-side stadium racing as these huge machines run flat out. With 4-wheel steering, turning corners is a lot easier. The rear wheels are turned or steered by a toggle switch on the dashboard. Amazing high-tech hydraulics allow the trucks to fly through the air, and huge braking systems bring them to a safe stop. In small stadiums, short sprints are popular because they're exciting, but drivers have to be quick on the brakes. Here's the world champion truck Taurus, ready to take on another monster in an arena no bigger than a hockey rink. Can you imagine trying to maneuver a monster truck in an arena this size? But these guys get the job done, though not without some problems, as both trucks slide dangerously off course. Picking up momentum, they're back on line. With less than half a lap to go, Taurus spins into the final corner, using excessive wheel speed to make the turn and crossing the finish line first. Now, Bigfoot and his arch rival Barefoot go at it with a vengeance. These two guys have had it in for each other since day one, and they'll do anything to win, even if it means wrecking the truck. Bigfoot's the winner, but the truck will need some serious attention. These trucks are built to take a pounding, and they usually do. A good truck will cost you around $100,000, and the maintenance can be very expensive too, depending on how you drive it. The harder you drive it, the more time you'll spend fixing it. Look out! These monster trucks are heavy and relatively stable, but at high speeds, any corner can be treacherous. Professional drag racing features the fastest accelerating cars in the world. This is an NHRA funny car driven by world champion John Force. Thousands of people witness these quarter-mile shootouts where the driver's reaction time is all important. The engines in these cars can produce close to 2,000 horsepower, and they will travel the quarter mile in 5.5 seconds at over 260 miles per hour. At the end of this run, flames trail from John Force's car, burning off the parachutes. But on this day, Force is lucky, as he will stop the car safely. But that's not always the case. Here you see a car called the Hawaiian, as it literally explodes in its run down the track, and then begins to disintegrate. The fiberglass body is blown off the car, as the driver fights to maintain control. After colliding with the guardrail, the engine comes loose and begins to separate from the chassis, as it bursts into flames. The frame is twisted wildly as the car continues to bounce around on the big rear racing tires which support it. But the car cannot overcome gravity and barrel rolls wildly. National Hot Rod Association safety structures within the car have saved the driver's life. This is Shirley Muldowney, one of the most famous of all world champion drag racers. Her car is a top-fuel dragster. They're even faster than the funny cars. One driven by Kenny Bernstein has run the quarter mile in 4.7 seconds at over 300 miles per hour. Here, Shirley shows us what survivors of speed are all about. After crossing the finish line and winning the race, the supercharger explodes on her engine, blowing out the left rear tire. Despite the impact of the explosion, Shirley controls the car beautifully and brings it to a slow roll and a final stop, avoiding what could have been a disastrous run.
Spectators enjoy a French car rally until one of the cars tragically loses control.
What you're looking at is a J85 jet engine. It's sitting inside a drag racing funny car. Let's watch and listen as the driver fires up his jet engine. You're about to see two jet funny cars drag race on the quarter mile. As they move to the starting line, the explosive burner pops fire up the crowd. Unlike traditional drag racers, these cars have no wheel spin. They're literally blowing down the track by the thrust of the jet engine. So they're a little slower off the starting line, but pick up speed in a hurry. The jet cars are capable of speeds over 300 miles per hour, but due to safety factors are not allowed to run over 260. Here are jet dragsters, just as popular as the funny cars. Take a look at this. It's a Peterbilt triple-engine jet truck made to run the quarter mile at over 200 miles an hour. You can feel the ground pound a mile away when this baby fires up. Motorcycles have come a long way since Daimler's Bone Shaker of 1885. Competitive motorcycle racing is one of the hottest motorsports in the world. Here are the flat trackers of the sport. They race on quarter, half, and full-mile dirt tracks and reach speeds of up to 130 miles an hour with little protection other than a helmet and leather suit. Riding these motorcycles is a real flirtation with danger. Close racing is what this sport is all about. Bumping wheels and banging into each other is routine and also risky at these speeds. A nasty spill can happen with no warning. Now, as we watch the final lap of this race, notice how important drafting is. That's when one motorcycle racer deliberately follows another, using the leader's slipstream of air to pull him along. And at the appropriate moment, he'll slingshot past the leader. Notice how the two rear machines are able to make high-speed passes on the leader. Rider number 67 has made the mistake of passing too early on the final lap. He should have waited for the fourth turn and final straightaway. Now, the second-place machine, bike number 3, will be able to turn the tables, drafting down the final straightaway to pass number 67 just before the finish line and win the race in spectacular fashion. Our next motorcycle race begins with a deck of cards. The racers draw for starting positions. The higher cards get the better spots. And what they're racing are speedway bikes, high-powered, lightweight machines that race on a very short dirt track. As you watch these motor jockeys, one thing you'll notice is that they race in a constant slide. They have to actually turn right to go left. In this sport, there's lots of action, and when one rider goes down, he usually takes a few others with him. Here, 3 riders are unsaddled, crashing down hard onto the racing surface. Fortunately, no one is seriously injured, but you can bet this guy's a little shaken. On the restart, they're back at it again. This is an international championship with the English and the Americans as the favorites. It's a close race, with the lead changing constantly. As the bikes continue to slide around the racetrack, they actually run as many as 3 side by side. It's a dangerous situation. This is a crowd-pleasing sport, where the fans rally behind their favorites with strong support. This race is narrowed to a 2-man showdown, neither one wanting to give an inch. Manhandling their machines, the riders cross over the ragged edge of disaster. They crash to the ground, both losing this war of nerves. The crowd is stunned. On the final restart, the field of colorful riders is thinned out. An American will dominate this battle-scarred pack of gutsy young riders who have survived a melee of speedway bike racing at its best. This intimidating mountain in the western United States is the site of the annual Widowmaker Hill Climb. It's a lifetime challenge of many a motorcyclist, most of whom never realize their dream of conquering the mountain. They come with all types of motorcycles. Each has been modified to master the slope. A weird assortment of rear tires has been invented to provide traction on the 70-degree incline. There are cups, scoops, shovels, all types of rear wheels. Whatever will get the job done. As you can see, it's not as easy as it looks. One rider after another takes on the mountain with confidence, only to be beaten back by the reality that the mountain is mightier than the machine. One rider stays focused, taking his lumps and bumps as he makes progress slowly at first, then with a burst of power, he speeds to the top. Where others have failed, he alone has conquered the mountain. You're inside the largest dome stadium in the United States. It's the Houston Astrodome, and this is a national championship motocross race. Of all the motorcycle racers, these guys take the most abuse. Tight-cornered chicanes, multi-bump rockers, and jumps are all part of an exhausting motocross course. And the competition is always close. Hondas, Suzuki's, Yamahas, and Kawasaki's are the leading machines. Part of this sport's excitement is the number of riders. 24 came out of the gate, and that's a lot on this narrow course. But each rider will find his pace and continue his pursuit of the biker in front of him. Safety equipment in motocross includes helmets and face masks, shin and elbow guards, and heavy boots. Small rocks can be lethal when they're shot at you from the rear tire of another bike. Here, the lead rider on a Kawasaki shows great skill as he maneuvers his way around the course with a little difficulty, while other riders have their ups and downs. Motocross is a combination of youthful spirit, endurance, and high-tech savvy. It's an elite group who can put it all together, but that's what makes them champions. This is a pack of airplanes competing in the Reno, Nevada air races. It's the Unlimited Gold Race, where expensive experimental aircraft fill the skies. The planes race around pylons, sometimes flying as low as 30 feet from the ground. The leader is in a plane called Stiletto, powered by a huge Merlin engine. You're in the cockpit with pilot Skip Holm at the controls. He dips the wing of the airplane to circle around a pylon as another aircraft, the Sea Fury, piloted by Rick Rickard, is hot on his tail. The two planes continue their dogfight, the Stiletto hanging on to the lead while the Sea Fury follows in close pursuit. Both pilots have the throttle pushed to the firewall as they fly at speeds of over 450 miles an hour. Back in the cockpit, Skip glances over his shoulder at the Sea Fury, which roars up alongside to make it an even race. Skip banks the plane sharply around another pylon, feeling the heavy G-force as he once again pulls slightly ahead of the Sea Fury pilot, Rick Rickard. Suddenly, while maneuvering through a tight turn, Skip notices that his oil pressure has dropped dangerously low. There's an oil leak in the Stiletto, which now trails a stream of white smoke. He sets up for an emergency landing, as his thoughts of winning change to thoughts of survival. The Sea Fury pulls ahead, while Skip concentrates on landing the plane before the engine seizes. Oil now covers the canopy, a grim reminder that he'd better hurry. Skip is on final approach and sets up for a perfect landing. He is safe, and the Sea Fury, piloted by Rick Rickard, goes on to win the Unlimited Gold Cup.
In West Germany, an Italian aerobatics display team was performing a complex maneuver. And in a split second, the Ramstein air show became a byword for disaster. More than 50 people were killed and many hundreds injured. Lessons could have been learned from a French experience. A new Airbus made a low fly past.
Back in the 1950s and 60s, exciting sprint car racing was very popular. Run mostly on dirt tracks, these powerful cars thrilled audiences everywhere. Power sliding through the corners provided great action. The problem with the cars was that they were open cockpit. Drivers sat up high in their cars and were always exposed to injury. Slipping and sliding was a constant affair in these cars. Oftentimes, they were just uncontrollable. Being open wheel, the cars were prone to climb up on each other. Running close in a pack could spell disaster. Fire could also be a problem. Oil leaks and fuel spills were commonplace. Driving these cars was a struggle. You were constantly fighting the wheel. A slight miscalculation could send you crashing. This driver was lucky. He was one of the first to drive a car with a roll cage. These became mandatory equipment on sprint cars in the early 1970s. Here, every car has a roll cage. Another problem with sprint car racing is that the cars easily tore up the tracks, making them bumpy and creating unnecessary ruts, which became safety hazards. You drive these cars by the seat of your pants. If it's sliding too much, you have to bring it back under control. If there are deep ruts, you have to avoid them or take the punishment they'll throw at you. All of this and watching out for the other cars too can keep a driver very busy. Sometimes it's more than he can handle. Here are some early sprint cars racing on a fast-paced, high-bank asphalt track. If a car begins to slide on a hard surface, it's serious trouble, as evidenced here. These are the Mighty Midgets. They're a little bit smaller than the sprint cars, but just as volatile. Bad accidents can happen in an instant. If you're not banging wheels, you're not racing hard enough. But with all this comes risk. And if you push it too hard, you're going to get into trouble. They call it the greatest spectacle in racing. This is the Indianapolis 500. During the 1960s and 70s, a revolution was taking place at this great motorplex. All cars were now rear-engine, while just a decade ago, they had been front-engine roadsters. Now, aerodynamics played a critical role. The cars were built to create downforce. They looked like flying wedges, but speeds rose dramatically to averages of over 160 miles an hour. The new aerodynamics of these cars did create one problem. As long as a driver was in clean air, that is, air undisturbed by a car in front of him, he could race fast and smooth. But if he got into air disrupted by the car in front of him, he could momentarily lose traction and control. And at Indianapolis, one car in trouble can cause a chain reaction, diminishing the field considerably. By 1985, car speeds at Indy had risen to over 200 miles an hour, and that same year witnessed one of the most spectacular races in Indy history. It would be called the Spin and Win race. Danny Sullivan was making his third IndyCar start from the middle of the third row. As the cars pushed off, Sullivan's chances were not very good. There were too many faster cars ahead of him, including Mario Andretti, who was starting on the inside of the second row. As the race developed, Sullivan's car was performing beautifully. And past the midway point, Sullivan had caught the leader, Mario Andretti. Then Sullivan cut to the inside of the racetrack to pass Andretti. They were side by side down the front straightaway and wheel to wheel into the turn. Coming off the turn, Sullivan had made the pass. Then suddenly his car lost traction and did a complete 360-degree spin. Sullivan jammed the car into a lower gear and kept running. In replay, we see Sullivan dangerously low on the track. When he tries to come back to the high side, the car loses traction. Andretti does a masterful job of avoiding him. Sullivan is even more savvy by getting the car restarted and back on track. He quickly radios to his pit crew that the yellow flag is for him. He's okay, but he'll need 4 new tires. In a matter of seconds, the crew puts on 4 fresh tires and refuels Sullivan's car to get him back underway in his pursuit of Andretti. Back on the speedway, Sullivan catches Andretti again and ironically passes him at the same spot on the turn where he had spun earlier. But this time, Sullivan makes the pass easily and goes on to win the 1985 running of the Indianapolis 500. The most sensational finish in Indy history came in 1989. On the last lap, Emerson Fittipaldi was racing side by side with Al Unser Jr. As they drove hard into turn number 3, their wheels touched, sending Unser out of control and into the wall. He was uninjured as his mangled car slid helplessly along the straightaway. It is here where man and machine purposely meet with the forces of resistance. Car bashing is what this sport is all about. The last car running will be declared the winner. Now, there are some rules. Well, sort of. No hitting in the driver's door. And if you let your car sit for more than 2 minutes, you're disqualified. The good thing about this sport is it gets unsafe, dilapidated cars off the highway. After a round of demolition derby, they're ready for the junkyard. If you'll notice, they're all big cars. The bigger, the better. Using the back end of the car as a battering ram is the best way to go about it. It saves your radiator and engine. The white number 6 car is a real mean machine. It's a Pontiac. No, it's a Chevrolet. Well, maybe it's a Ford. Could even be an Oldsmobile. Who can tell anymore? These cars get so smashed up, it's sometimes hard to tell the front from the back. These iron ramrods have about reached the end of their lives. And when some go, they really blow. Here's something I'll bet you've never seen. This is car train racing. It's 3 cars hooked together to make a train. There's a driver in the front car, no one in the second, and another driver in the third car or the caboose. Now, to make things interesting, the trains race on a figure-8 course, zigging and zagging their way through the crossing. It's mayhem in the middle. Now, it does get a little dangerous for the guy steering the rear car. He has no control. He can't slow down or speed up the train. He's just along for the ride, fighting to keep the train in a straight line. And the crossing, well, it does get crowded. For these trains, the next stop will be the junkyard. These bizarre-looking contraptions. They look like they're from outer space. Perhaps they're the military's latest secret weapon or some kind of newfangled tractor. Well, if you guessed a boat on wheels, you're right. These are swamp buggies. These homemade jerry-rigged collections of scrap iron are put together with everything from coat hangers to plumbing fixtures. What swamp buggies do best is race. This water-filled raceway, built in the Florida swamps, is loaded with seepy holes. These are drop-offs where the water really gets deep. You could be cruising along, leading the race, when all of a sudden, there's a seepy hole and down you go. This sport is a great way to cool off. You're underwater most of the time, and you can bet the noise scares away the alligators. Whoever dreamed up this sport had a wild imagination, and the crowd, they love it. The engines in these buggies have been pulled out of old tractors, Jeeps, boats, and some say even lawnmowers. Well, whatever your power plant, in swamp buggy racing, winning is everything. And why not? It gives you the honor of jumping back in the swamp with the trophy girl. Pickup trucks used to be just for hauling. Now there's another use, racing. This quarter-mile speedway is the setting for a no-holds-barred truck race. These trucks are of the lightweight type, with small but powerful engines. They're virtually stock with few modifications. The suspension system is beefed up a bit to take the stress, and roll bars have been added for safety. Because the trucks are so similar, the racing is close. It's a common sight to see these vehicles racing side by side, and there's always plenty of tailgating, with one truck riding right up on the rear of another. But that can get you into trouble. Here's a new twist in truck racing. These are modified over-the-road diesel trucks. Before they became racers, they hauled all kinds of goods. But now they serve a new purpose, racing wheel-to-wheel on high-speed ovals. Although diesel power holds the speed down a bit, there's still plenty of action. It's a real mixed bag of Peterbilts, Chevys, Fords, and Mack trucks. These big rigs weigh plenty, and once they get rolling, they're hard to stop. The tandem wheels on the rear make for some pretty good road-hugging traction. Although they've been downsized from their original stock look, the chassis components are much the same. With most of the weight up front, they're tough to handle. Many of these racers are everyday truck drivers. During the week, they're busy hauling cargo across the country and through major cities. But on weekends, their only destination is the checkered flag. When they're on the speedway, there are very few rules of the road and no speed limit. These drivers try to stay out of trouble. But the more the competition heats up, the more risks they're willing to take. A little more speed down the straightaway, braking a little too late in the corner. It can all add up to big trouble. Wild and crazy is the only way to describe truck pulling. These two-wheel drive trick trucks compete to see who can pull a 30,000-pound weighted sled the farthest. It takes a big supercharged engine to get the job done, and this sport has a huge following. Once these trucks are up on two wheels, you steer them with the rear brakes, so it's not totally out of control. It just looks that way. This is a contest of brute force. This 37 Chevy will make it all the way up to the grandstand. Each of these trucks has its own unique personality, like this one called Psycho. It's a Ford unlike any you've ever seen before. The rear tires on these wheel standers have thick traction bars that dig deep into the dirt pulling surface. Too much wheel spin can dig you deep into a hole. Letting the clutch out smoothly as you accelerate is crucial in getting a good pull. Now let's watch one of the most exciting trucks in the world, Psycho. These are the headbangers of the truck racing world. It's Mickey Thompson's off-road stadium truck racing. It's like motocross with pickup trucks. And what a pounding they take. Twisting, turning, bobbing, and weaving are all part of this fender-flying sport. The trucks are specially built to handle the bumps and jumps these punishing tracks dish out. These slam-bang affairs are a spin-off of off-road racing, where trucks pound across the desert for hundreds of miles. Here, the distances are shorter, but even more grueling. Modern-day stock car racing is far different from the early beach days. The cars still look stock, but looks are deceiving. Underneath, everything is high-tech, super strong, and built specifically for hardcore racing. The cars weigh 3,500 pounds and are capable of speeds of over 200 miles an hour. But one thing hasn't changed from the old days: the danger. GTP prototypes are no different. Although they race exclusively on road courses, they too can reach speeds of over 200 miles an hour. Totally different from stock cars, these machines are designed as purebred race cars with specially engineered engines and aerodynamically perfect body styles. Each car is a unique creation. As far as sophisticated race cars go, these are the street fighters, racing primarily through the streets of major U.S. cities, where every turn can bring a disaster. The GTP car is unique and exotic, but just as dangerous as any race car. The modern era of the thrill show has retained many of the old traditions. Today's most famous group of hell drivers is the Joey Chitwood Thrill Show. Here they thread the needle with a double pass, weaving in and out to the delight of the crowd. Precision driving is the group's specialty. The Chitwood Show started back in 1950 and is the sole thrill show to survive from that era. Playing mostly state fairs, they're out on the road 8 months of the year. One of the big problems with thrill shows is maintenance. Keeping the cars in shape for as many as 2 shows a day can be a real challenge. Fire always adds an element of danger, especially for the human battering ram. Oh, that could be painful. Now everyone's getting ready for the big finale. Coming down the straightaway and gaining speed, we're about to see the famous Chitwood Cannonball Jump. All eyes on the car. Now meet a daredevil of another kind, a young man who is willing to risk serious injury and put it all on the line. This is a motorcycle jumper who travels from city to city, setting up his ramps and jumping over cars and trucks to the delight of the audience. As you can see, he's very good at it. He makes this jump with room to spare. His jumps typically range from 70 to 130 feet. They call him Super Joe Einhorn. He's from San Pablo, California, and he's been chasing the dream of becoming the world's greatest motorcycle jumper. He's a man who's rid his body of fear. But even he would tell you that maybe that's not a smart thing to do. It allows you to take chances that perhaps you shouldn't. Joe has broken bones many times and suffered countless other injuries. Here, he prepares for a spectacular nighttime fire jump. 20,000 people are on hand to wish him well. Joe's speed will have to be around 70 miles an hour if he's going to clear this jump. He is well focused. He is successful, and the fans are not disappointed. And Joe will go on to even bigger jumps, where he will make a name for himself attempting to reach his goal. On this day, Joe will attempt a new world's record, jumping over 16 full-size buses. If he's successful, he will clear more than 170 feet. The ramp is angled steeply. His speed now exceeds 80 miles an hour. Joe is down. The motorcycle skids away. But this time, Joe gets up to jump another day. Here's a group of performers from Russia. This show is called Autovaz. What makes it so unique is that most of their stunts are performed while on two wheels. These showmen travel around the world using Russian-made Lada automobiles. Here we see the dancing cars as they balance to the music of a waltz. The secret to keeping these cars up on two wheels is to overinflate the tires. And of course, a skillful driver is a must. This tricky maneuver is called walking the dog. The driver skillfully accelerates the car while keeping it under control. This can be very dangerous if the car gets away from you, but this Russian performer seems to have it down pat. A crowd favorite is this stunt, where the performers actually remove the wheels from the car. Of course, now we have a problem. Where to get two new fresh wheels. As the car continues to circle the arena, the crowd wonders how they'll get the car down. Fortunately, there's two new tires in the trunk, which soon replace the other two. The real responsibility is on the driver. With wheels being removed and three performers constantly shifting weight around on the car, it's a real task to keep the vehicle balanced. A final twist of the wrench, and the job is completed. In the finale, all 12 members of the Russian Autovaz troupe are riding on and in the car. Did you only count 11? Well, number 12 is the one in the trunk. Now, meet one of the true survivors of speed. In this car is one of the world's greatest stunt drivers. He has been featured in dozens of major motion pictures. A couple of big movie jobs allowed him to take off on his own. Pyrotechnics are used to make his jumps truly spectacular. Here, Brian picks up speed to fly his car into a 30-foot stack of automobiles. The explosion will shake the grandstand. Brian Carson really knows how to set the night on fire. In this mass of burning metal, he was hard to find. The crowd certainly appreciated his efforts, but they too were concerned until Brian emerged from the wreckage safe and sound. He was shaken up, but once again, he had survived. One of his scariest jumps was this one. Watch carefully as he misses the catch cars and flips over. Fortunately, no injuries. What you're looking at is the most difficult jump of Brian's career, a distance of 350 feet. For this one, he has prepared carefully, making sure the Cadillac sedan he drives will not fail him. Now, at 90 miles an hour, he sets his sight on the most dangerous stunt of his career. Keep your eyes on Brian Carson. As the crowd waits to hear of Brian's condition, we take another look, only to see that Brian's car will fall short of the catch cars, smashing down on the last semi-trailer, sending him twisting and flipping end over end as the car collapses around him. Once again, Brian Carson emerges without injury. He is just one of an elite group of world-class survivors of speed.